أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. Today inshallah we're going to continue our series on different modes of putting stress in the sentences, and the one that we are going to address today is what is called tajub in Arabic grammar, and it revolves around the idea of how amazing, terrible something is. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover in this lesson, inshallah. So let's proceed with the lesson, and of course, you can to ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to make it easier for us to teach as well as to understand. Now, you must know this diagram by now, of course, and the one that we're going to address in this lesson is right here: astonishment or amazement. Okay, so let's see. Now, whenever you are talking about how terrible or amazing something is, of course, you need to mention three things. First of all, you need to have an object of amazement. So, what is amazing or who is amazing? Okay, so that is your object of amazement. Next, you need to know what is the aspect of amazement, whether it is negative or positive. So, is something amazing or is something bad or terrible? Okay, so that is your aspect of amazement. Next, you need to have, or you could say, it elaborates the aspect in a much detailed manner. Okay, so you can call it a further detail of the aspect of amazement. That is your reason of amazement. Okay, so for example, you've got a couple of sentences over here. How awesome is this burger? Now, what is awesome? It's burger, right? And is it good or bad? Well, it is good, so it's awesome. Okay, now here a further detail is kind of required, that what makes this burger awesome? What is this burger awesome in terms of? So is it awesome in terms of its size, or its content, or it's less spicy or more spicy, or what kind of thing it is that makes this burger awesome for you? Okay, so that comes as the further detail or simply the reason of amazement. Okay, now this burger is going to be the object of amazement, and this word awesome is the aspect of amazement. So is it good or is it bad? Over here we can see clearly that it is good. Let's look at the second sentence. How terrible is this place, or how terrible is that place? Once again, the object of amazement is the place, and this is the negative aspect. Okay, so how bad or how terrible it is. And here, once again, we do not have the reason of amazement in this sentence, but of course, it will be needed. Okay, further details, that what is it that makes that place terrible? Is it the humidity content, or the weather, or is it too stormy, or it's infested with I don't know, with clouds or whatever? Okay, so what makes that place terrible? All right, now let's check this third sentence. It says, what an amazingly boring book. Now, of course, this is a sarcasm, okay? And what it says, or what it means or implies, is that what an amazing book in terms of its boredom. So if the award of the most boring book was to be given, this is the book that would get it. Okay, so this is what this sentence is saying. So of course, you can also use amazement for sarcasm, and this is something that all of us do almost all the time. Okay, so that's what. So as you can see, the word book here is the object of amazement, and amazingly is the aspect of amazement. So it's telling us it's really good. And what is it good at? Being boring. Okay, so this word boring is the reason of amazement. Okay, now it might be too much for you to remember, so I have further simplified it into this little acronym here. Simply remember OR. For OR, you have to find, or you have to have, the object of amazement, and then and for A, it is the aspect of amazement, as in is it good or bad, positive or negative, and R simply stands for the reason of amazement. What is it good or bad in? Okay, so simply remember or and you'll be good to go, inshallah. Okay, now comes our little summary chart, and as you can see, there are 5 ways of putting stress by using amazement or tajab. Okay, and we can see that it's slightly crowded over here, but the best part is that it's super easy and extremely logical to understand. Okay, all right, so let's just zoom this one up first, and yeah, okay, so what do we see here? We see bisa slash ni'mal kitabu. So, and it says, what a terrible or amazing book. Now, you see how we say in English, what a terrible book, or what an amazing day. Okay, so the words for terrible and amazing are bisa and ni'ma. Okay, respectively. So if you want to say terrible, you say bisa. If you want to say amazing, you have to say, or you have to say ni'ma. Okay, bisa for bad, it starts with ba. Okay, so bisa, bad or terrible, and ni'ma, we all know what ni'ma. We all know the word na'im or in'am, that means blessings or gifts. Okay, gifts actually. So ni'ma is the good word. Okay, it is the positive word, you could say. Okay, so these are the words for amazing and terrible. Now, what you have to do is simply use this word besa, and then you have to add the object of amazement right after it, and that has to be in rafa form. That is it. You're done with your sentence of amazement. Okay, so you know how we always say hasbunallahu ni'mal wakil, ni'mal wakil. Okay, so we have ni'ma over there. What an amazing caretaker of the plants, ni'mal wakil. And here it is ni'mal wakilu. Why? Because the object of amazement has to be in rafa form. Okay, as you can see here. So ni'mal kitabu means what an amazing book, and Basil kitabu means what a terrible book. Okay, and of course you can see here that the object of amazement has to be rafa, and that there are no variations of ni'ma in besa. What I mean by this is that besa will always remain besa no matter what. Okay, and there are 2 variations of the next category that we are going to study, and that's why I've mentioned this word over this statement over here, that there are no variations of nema and besa. Okay, so I hope that this nema and besa thing is clear, inshallah. Okay, now let's do this. Okay, same concept, not much of a difference. The only 2 things that you need to remember are that number 1, the words for, there are 2 other words for amazing and terrible. However, they have two variations each. Okay, so first of all, just as we had ni'ma for good, we have hasuna for good in this category. Okay, hasuna, and the second variation of hasuna is hasunat. Now, if you guys know your fail patterns by now, I hope you guys do that. You guys must see the pattern of fa'ala and fa'alat over here. Okay, so anything that ends with the at sound like this means that it is the hiya version, and anything that ends with this fatha in the end usually means that it is the huwa version. Okay, so that's what you can observe over here. Hasuna is the huwa version, and hasunat is the hiya version. Now, what does it mean? What implication does this thing have? It means that the nouns or the objects of amazement that are feminine, grammatically feminine, are going to be used with hasunat. And if the object of amazement is grammatically masculine, then this variation of hasana needs to be used. Okay, So this is the huwa version. Therefore, hasuna is going to describe or put the amazement for the masculine, for the grammatically masculine objects of amazement. Okay, and opposite is true for hasanat. All right. Okay, so this was the thing about variations, and as I told you in this example that there are no variations in Ne'ma and Besa. That's what I meant. Okay, that there are no variations of Ne'ma and Besa, but there are two variations in Hasana and of Hasuna and Za'a. Okay, so what are those variations? It's the Huwa and Hiya variations. Okay, so Hasuna is for masculine, grammatically masculine objects of amazement, and Hasanat is for the grammatically feminine objects of amazement. Okay, all right. Now Hasuna, you might have guessed, it means good. Okay, and Sa'a means bad, terrible. Okay, so Hasuna has its Hiya version of Hasanat, and Sa'a has the feminine version of Sa'at. Okay, now let's see the sentence. Let's look at the sentence. We have Hasuna Zaidun Mu'alliman. Forget about Sa'a for a bit. So we have Hasuna Zaidun Mu'alliman. So what do we see here? We see that the object of amazement is Zaid. Okay, and it is Rafa. Okay, object of amazement is always Rafa. And the reason of amazement is in nasab form. Okay, so Zaid is great at being a teacher. Okay, so that's what. So what do you have to remember? You have to remember hasuna, the meaning of hasuna, and then you have to remember that the object of amazement is going to be in rafa form, and the reason of amazement is going to be in nasab form, and it is going to come after the object of amazement. Similarly, if you say sa'a zaidun mu'alliman, okay, forget about hasuna now, it would mean that how terrible is Zaid as a teacher. Okay, once again, Zaid being the object of amazement. Okay, it comes right after the failed tajubiya, which is sa'a. All right, and then we have the mu'alliman, which is the reason of amazement. Okay, great. Now let's look at the hiya versions. So we have, forget about sa'at, we have hasunat. So we have hasunat, and our feminine are grammatically as well as actual object of amazement is a feminine noun, Fatimatu, right? So that's why we're going to use hasunat and not hasuna. Okay, so hasunat Fatimatu mu'allimatan. This mu'allimatan being nasab shows that this is the reason of amazement. Okay, and it has to be nasab, and it tells us what Fatima is good at. So how amazing is Fatma as a teacher? Okay, that's how it's going to be understood as. Similarly, if Fatma is horrible at being a teacher, you are going to use the word Sa'at. Okay, so this is it. Now that's all summarized over here. That object of amazement, yeah, is always Rafa. Okay, and the reason of amazement is always Nasab, and it's always used after the afal tajubiya. These are the afal tajubiya, hasuna and sa'a. Okay, and of course hasunat and sa'at. Then the variations for afal tajubiya are huwa and hiya. So just as I mentioned. Now about the omission. At times you may not find this object of amazement written right next to hasunat or sa'a. So what you're going to find is, let me show you. Okay, so what you're going to find is, for example, our sentence is Sa'at Fatimatu Mu'allimatan. Okay, this is our sentence. Sa'at Fatimatu Mu'allimatan. How horrible is Fatima as a teacher? Now, at times, let's just say you're reading and there's this person who you're talking about. You know that you're reading about the story of a girl named Fatima who is teaching or who loves to teach or whatever. And then you come up with a sentence. It says Sa'at Mu'allimatan. Now, just as you read the word sa'at, you would automatically expect to see the next word to be in rafa form, but you don't see the rafa form. You form a word in nasab form. Okay, you see mu'allimatan and not mu'allimatun. If it were sa'at mu'allimatun, then it would mean that how terrible is the female feminine teacher. Okay, and and the thing that you're going to notice is that this is actually nasab form. Okay, so in that case it is understood that the object of amazement has been omitted. Okay, so unless you know what's being talked about or what has been talked about in the past or in the previous text or in the previous paragraphs or sentences or whatever, you can't exactly guess what the object of amazement is. So to find out the object of amazement, you have to go back. Okay, you have to sift through the pages, you have to go back a couple of paragraphs or sentences, and then you're going to find out who is being talked about. Okay, who is the horrible teacher? Okay, or rather, who is so horrible as a teacher? All right, so we have this point covered, that if it is omitted, you need to use context and the judgment call to find out who the object of amazement is. All right, so I hope that this thing is also clear now. So if you find sa'a or if you find hasuna mu'alliman, you are automatically going to expect a marfu or a rafa form after hasuna, but you come across the nasab form. So it is understood that the object of amazement has been omitted, and you need to know who it is by going back a little. Okay, next. Or let's just do subhanallah first. Okay, now the easiest thing about this thing is that it is used only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the word subhan. Okay, it is always nasab and light, and it is always used and only used with the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so that's it. And of course this is a muzaf fragment. Okay, now let's come to af'il bihi. This is also very easy. What you see here is that you have the pattern of af'il, and then it is followed by bihi. Now the sequence is that the object of amazement is always written with B, okay, and the reason as well as the aspect of amazement is used in the pattern of af'il. Okay, so for example, if we have the root letters of an, lam, mim, meaning knowledge, you use these root letters in the pattern of af'il, so it becomes a lim. Okay, and then you have the object of amazement as jar, so it becomes bil binti. Okay, so how amazingly does the girl know? Okay, this is what it means. Similarly, if you don't want to use an actual ism, okay, then of course you can also use the noun. And of course, since we have the harf b in this structure, the noun as well as the pronoun is going to be in jar form, as you can see. Okay, so it's going to be bil binti. Okay, binti, it is your jar form, and similarly this he is also your jar form. Alim binti, or simply af'il bihi. Okay, this was our first structure. The second structure is ma af'alahu. Okay, and the same thing happens here. You have to have ma, and then you have to write the aspect and the reason of amazement in the pattern of Allah. Okay, so for example, if you have the same root letters of an, lam, and mim, and then you have to use it in this pattern, then you simply use these root letters in the pattern of Allah, and it would become lama, and then this who would mean the object of amazement. Okay, now this object of amazement here in this structure ma af'alahu is going to be in nasab form. okay, not in jar form because there's nothing to make it jar, and it has to be used in nasab form. Okay, so that's what it says. The object of amazement, it comes after the reason of amazement. So here we have the reason of amazement as well as the aspect of amazement, okay, of Allah. And then we have the object of amazement right after it, and it has to be in nasab form, whether it's a pronoun or otherwise. So okay. So if you have ma atyabahu, now the root letters here are the are the ta, ya, and ba. Okay, so atyaba, and then you have the object of amazement, which is who, ma atyabahu. All right, so how pure it is. And the reason of amazement assumes a pattern of af'ala, as I told you earlier on. Now, the last thing about this pattern, and then we're going to proceed with the examples, inshallah. Okay, so ma, forget about kana and yakunu, forget about this thing at the moment. So you have ma atiyaba manzaran. So manzaran is your object of amazement. Okay, why? Because it is after the pattern of atiyaba, right? And it is in the subform. Okay, and ma atiyaba manzaran is simply means how pure is the view. Okay, now what about kana and yakunu? Now we'll study kana and yakunu in the next section, which is going to be about fail, and we're going to study these two words in quite a bit of detail, so I'm not going to introduce these in a much greater detail here in this lesson. Okay, however, kana roughly means was, and yakunu roughly means is or will be. Okay, so that's what. Now, so if you want to restrict the amazement to mazi or to past, you use the word kana in the pattern of ma, or in the structure of ma af'ala bihi, ma af'ala hu. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. If you want to use, if you, for example, if you say ma kana atyaba manzaran, it would mean how pure was the view. But if you say ma yakunu atyaba manzaran, it would mean how pure will the view be. Okay, so that's how you are going to restrict the amazement to any tense. Okay, so I have explained this entire thing, and now we're just going to quickly look at the examples, and whatever text you see right in front of you here is simply the text form of what I have already explained to you. Okay, so I'm just going to read through these things quickly. Now, there are 5 basic ways for putting amazement in Arabic. First of all, you have the aspect words. So these Ne'ma and Besa thing that we did here, okay? Yeah, here. So these are your aspect words. Now, this is not the actual terminology. I like to call it aspect words because they simply mention the aspect quite straightforwardly. Okay, bad and terrible. That's it. So these aspect words are followed by the ism in rafa form. Okay, and you've got, for example, Ne'ma for positive amazement. It means nice. Okay, so Ne'ma means nice. Okay, the sound of na. For example, Ne'ma sawabu. Okay, Ne'ma sawabu. What an amazing reward. Be'sa, for example, Be'sa sharabu. What a horrible drink. Okay, so these were the aspect words. Now we have the aspect words followed by the object and reason. Okay, so we have to further tell the details. We have to further elaborate at why is this object of amazement so amazing. Okay, so an ism in rafa and then nasab forms. Okay, so what you have the object of amazement in rafa form, and the reason of amazement is in nasab form. Okay, for example, hasuna zaidun taliban. What an amazing student Zaid is. Okay, so, or how amazing is Zaid as a student in terms of being a student. Okay, similarly, hasunat. Now this is the feminine variation. Hasunat fatimatu talibatan. What an amazing student Fatima is. Similarly, sa'a is bad. So what a terrible student is Zaid. Or Sa'at Fatimatu Talibatan, how terrible is Fatima as a student. Okay, quite easy. And then of course I told you that at times you're going to find the word right next to hasuna or sa'a to be nasab. In that case, you're going to assume, you're going to in fact understand that the object of amazement has been omitted. That's why this mansub or this nasab ism is present over here. Okay, so for that you'll need to go back and read into the text that who was being talked about or what was being talked about earlier on to work out the object of amazement. Okay, so you've got hasunat murtafaq. And now if you had already been reading the earlier excerpt or the paragraph, you would know that the jannah is being talked about here, so you would understand automatically that since the object of amazement is missing from here, and the word that was supposed to be, or rather the word that is right after hasunat is in nasab form, so obviously the object of amazement has been omitted, and this thing murtafaqan is actually defining the thing that has been talked about. Okay, all right, next you've got hasuna rajulu aliman rather, how amazing is the man as a scholar. Then you've got sa'at murtafaqan, similarly how terrible is it as a place to rest. Then sa'a tajiran, how terrible is he as a trader. Okay, and of course you only have the huwa and hiya versions in this type, in this category. All right, now the next structure that we have here is ma af'alahu, and as I told you earlier on, that the structure means that in this structure we have to have the object of amazement in the end. Okay, and it's going to be in nasab form. Okay, and the aspect and the reason are determined by the meaning of the root letters used in the pattern of afala. Okay, so for example, ma atiyabahu, here the root letters are ta, ya, and ba, and the root letters here are ka, fa, and ra. Okay, so the very word or the meaning of these root letters are going to form the aspect as well as the reason of the amazement. Okay, so this is the good thing about this structure. All right, and of course now you are going to use your judgment call to identify a sarcasm, because a sentence such as what a pure heart he has can also be used for can also be intended as a sarcasm. Okay, so you do say this thing sarcastically, to be honest. Okay, so this is where your judgment call comes into play. All right, and well, the object of amazement is going to be in nasab form, and it's going to be at the end of the structure, of course, and it can be a pronoun or otherwise. Okay, so let's look at the examples. Sorry if I'm a bit out of breath. Anyways, so our example is ma alama zaidan, how knowledgeable is Zaid. Okay, so you can see the object of amazement as nasab, it's in the end, and the reason and the aspect of amazement is right here after is right after ma in the pattern of af'ala. Okay, so we can easily understand what this sentence means. Okay, so now these are simply different variations here, that ma af'ala and then the nasab form. So you have ma alama zaidan, then you've got ma af'alahu. Here the object of amazement is in pronoun form, so ma alamahu. All right, ma ashadda, and then whatever the object of amazement it is, so how extremely hot it is, ma ashadda al-hara. Then ma kana af'alahu. Now the word kana here means that the amazement has been restricted to the past. So ma kana atyaba manzar al-bahri, it simply means that what an amazingly pure view was there, or it was of the view of the ocean. Okay, manzar al-bahra, manzar al-bahri is muzaf muzaf ilayh. okay, because al-bahri is in jar form and manzara is light, it is without al, and it is nasab, meaning that it is the object of amazement. So what an amazingly pure view it was of the ocean. Okay, that's what it's trying to say. Then ma yakunu af'alahu. Yakunu has restricted the amazement to future. So ma yakunu atyaba manzar al-bahri would mean what an amazingly pure view of the ocean it will be. Okay, that's what. Now to our second last pattern or structure rather, we have af'il bihi. Here the object of amazement is in jar form. Why? Because of the letter or the harf b. Okay, it's the same b as we have studied in harf jar. Okay, so this b is going to cause the object of amazement to be in jar form, whether it's a pronoun or otherwise. Okay, so for example, it's either going to be bil binti or biha. It's totally fine. All right, the next thing is that the object of amazement is going to come at the end of the structure. We know that. Okay, of course. So af'il bihi, and the aspect of reason here in this structure are determined by the root letters meanings of by the root letters meaning in the pattern of af'il. Okay, so whatever root letters are used in the pattern of af'il, the meaning of those root letters would determine the aspect and reason. Okay, so if the root letters here once again are an, lam, mim, then it's going to be alim bil binti. How knowledgeable is the girl? Okay, or akfir biha, it would mean how ungrateful is she? Okay, or rather she is. How ungrateful is she, how ungrateful she is. So that's what. Okay, now a couple of examples of il be, and then you have got a jar form. So lim bil binti. Okay, of il bihi, how knowledgeable is he? Lim bihi. Okay, so this is it. And then of course you all know subhanallah. I have already described this phrase for you. It's muzaf muzaf ilayh, and it is subhan. The word subhan is only and always used for the word Allah. Okay, and the word subhan is going to be light in nasab. It means how perfect is Allah. Okay, so these kind of stresses are quite common, and you are simply going to understand these things simply by looking at them. If once you know that these implications exist in these structures, you are automatically be auto-tuned rather. Your mind will be auto-tuned to relate to such implications when you're reading the Musaf. Okay, now I'm not saying reciting exactly, I'm saying reading. Okay, so when you are reading Arabic, or even if you're reciting, once you get to that stage, your mind will be auto-tuned to identify these structures and then understand them for what they are exactly. You won't at all need translation, and inshallah that time will come. Okay, so here we are done with astonishment, and just a couple of more lessons are left for the modes of stress. So we are done with oath, rafa pronouns, not this one yet, superlatives, comparatives, the stress words, patterns, synonyms, masdar, astonishment, and we are left with the special words. We are done with al, we are done with lam ta'kid and the stressed present tense, and now just a couple of these are left. So we need to do the making the kravan, certain repetitions, sequence alteration, special words, and using ism, and of course this uh, smallest and least version. Okay, so it's quite easy. Go through the lesson, it's quite easy. Listen to it again, and inshallah you'll be able to identify these structures during your recitation. I'll see you in the next lesson. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim. Allah Hafiz.